Today, let us study the Word of God together under the title, God Who Says Come. When we see the teachings of the Bible, God said that all of His flock have one characteristic. They recognize God's voice and follow Him. God allowed all His lambs to have this characteristic. In the Gospel of John, we can see the words of Jesus, "My sheep listen to my voice, and they follow me." God distinguishes between lambs and goats and between wheat and weeds among all mankind with whether or not they listen to His voice. In this way, He can lead His lambs into the eternal kingdom of heaven. This is the teaching of the Bible. So then, if God says, "Come," what would His flock do once they recognize His voice? They would come to God. However, if God calls other beasts and says, "Come," they would not come to God. This means that only God's flock can recognize His voice and follow Him. This is the teaching of the Bible. Let's take a look at the Gospel of John chapter 10, verse 1. I tell you the truth. The man who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The man who enters by the gate is the shepherd of his sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep, what do his sheep do? Follow him, because they know his voice. Since they know their shepherd's voice, what do? They follow him. They follow their shepherd's voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used this figure of speech, but they did not understand what He was telling them. They did not understand what Jesus meant. Today, we can understand the meaning of these words. Only God's sheep can correctly recognize God's voice and follow Him. Let's turn to Revelation chapter 22, verse 17. The Spirit and the bride say, the Spirit is God the Father. Who is the bride? The bride is God the Mother. In other words, their children can recognize their voice. Let's read verse 17 one more time. The Spirit and the bride say, "Come," and let him who hears say, "Come." Whoever is thirsty, let him come, and whoever wishes, let him take the free gift of the water of life. God's lambs listen to God's voice and seek the Spirit, who is God the Father, and the bride, who is God the Mother. Their lambs will never refuse to follow their guidance. When the Spirit and the bride say, "Come," we must definitely go to Zion, where the Spirit and the bride dwell. For this reason, God has rebuilt Zion and has directed the last saints to go to Zion, so that they can meet the Spirit and the bride there. Let us turn to Revelation chapter 18 to learn about God's children who correctly recognize and listen to the voice of God. Verse 4. Then I heard another voice from heaven say, "Come out of her, my people." If God says to His sheep, "Come out of her, my people," and if they are truly God's sheep, they will react to His voice and surely come out. We just teach them the Sabbath day, the Passover, and the 7 feasts in 3 times, and they all come out. Let's read verse 4 again. Then I heard another voice from heaven say, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. For her sins are piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes. Give back to her as she has given. Pay her back double for what she has done. Mix her a double portion from her own cup." Where does God tell his people to go after they come out of Babylon? It says in Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 5, "Announce in Judah and proclaim in Jerusalem and say, sound the trumpet throughout the land. Cry aloud and say, gather together. Let us flee to the fortified cities." God says, come out from that place. Here God says, enter this place. Just like this, there is a place where God tells us to come out from, and there is a place where he tells us to enter. Let's continue with verse 6. Raise the signal to go to Zion. Flee for safety without delay. For I am bringing disaster from the north, even terrible destruction. Without even knowing, you have come to the Spirit and the bride by coming to Zion, following the voice of prophecy. Since we have such convincing proof from the Bible, we must not turn to the right or to the left, or to any other way that is not the teaching of father and mother. Since the Spirit and the bride, who are our saviors, say, come, we should never forget their voice that is calling us to come. Thank you very much.